Hi, I'm Lillian and this is my May wrap-up. I have 4 books to talk about today, but before I do I wanted to ask all 6 of my subscribers to check the description of this video where I've put petitions, places to donate and other actions you can take to support the Black Lives Matter movement. I've also been making a sort of master list of all the books, TV shows, films, documentaries I've seen being recommended over the past week or so. Whenever I see a list of recommendations, I've saved it and then added it to this list, so you might find that useful as well. So the first book I read was Heimat by Nora Krug. This was my choice for the book club me and my sister and a few friends are doing. So very 2 days in now, if you're watching this video, skip this section because I'm about to get off my thoughts about this one. Everyone else watching, you should know that I really liked this book. It's kind of a graphic memoir. It's sort of like a graphic novel, but it incorporates a lot of mixed media. There's like old photos and reports and artifacts and everything, and it makes it feel almost like a scrapbook, or like the title says, an album of some kind. And this made it really interesting to read. I loved all the little details and like cultural aspects it brought to the book. This book talks about the author's life growing up in Germany after the Second World War, and also that of the 2 sides of her family. So at the front and end pages we have this kind of family tree of sorts for her mother and her dad's side of her family. And the main idea of the book is this concept of Heimat. This is a word which doesn't really have an English translation. The closest you might get is homeland, but again it's not exactly the same thing. There's actually still quite a lot of debate in Germany and in the German speaking community about what Heimat actually means. I studied German at university and we even had a whole topic on Heimat because people are still talking about it and debating. We studied it in the context of immigration and the refugee crisis in Europe, but this book looks at Heimat in the context of the author looking at her country, her Heimat, and trying to reconcile with its Nazi history, and also investigating this sense of belonging, because at the same time everyone wants a home, everyone wants a homeland or a Heimat to belong to and some sort of shared history, but then you don't really want to be part of the German history. I thought this book was really powerful. It's at the same time very personal because it's about her and her identity and her family's history, but also it looks at the German history as a whole, and the whole book is kind of a balancing act between those 2 aspects. The author is very aware at all times during the book that she has this almost childish want to investigate her family history and find out that everything has a happy ending almost, and like her family were these huge dissenters of the Nazi regime and they saved loads of people's lives during World War II, but at the same time there's always this overhanging sense of guilt and shame because she knows that's probably not going to be what actually happened. This isn't a huge dramatic story about how it turns out her family were high up Nazis. It's more of a nuanced look at a set of average German citizens and the roles they played in the history of Germany and in World War II, and how that impacted them and the later generations coming all the way down to the author. And I think it's all the more powerful for being about this sort of middle of the road family, and it emphasises that any family in Germany could have a story like this to tell. I found it quite an emotional read because all the way through every page is imbued with this mixture of shame and grief and love and longing for something which doesn't quite exist. And I did tear up near the end because it has quite a bittersweet ending, I would say, and really you could say the whole book is quite bittersweet in a way. I want to point out one moment in particular that's really stuck with me from this book. I guess it's kind of a spoiler, so I think if you're planning on reading this book, skip this bit because it won't hit you with as much punch as I experienced, and that's like the whole reason this bit stuck with me. So there's one bit where she and her family go on a family holiday to, I think, Italy, and they drive past a military cemetery and decide to stop and have a little walk around, and her dad vanishes for a bit and they like wonder what he's up to and what he's looking at. And it turns out that he is looking at the records for the cemetery to find a specific person. And I want to read the exact quote. So it says, "Among all these unfamiliar names belonging to people unknown to him, my father found what he had been looking for, his own name." Because what happened was he had an older brother who I think was 18 or something years older than him, who died during World War II before he was even born. And then after his death, when his parents had another son, the author's father, they gave him the exact same name. And that's like kind of creepy. But that was just like one of very many very powerful moments throughout this book. I think this is a 5-star read for me. I'm very picky about giving out 5 stars, but because this book did have such an impact on me, I think it's going to creep in there. I'm not sure if I would have liked it as much if I hadn't been interested in German history. I think I might have found it maybe a bit confusing, like some of the references. There's a lot of stuff which is just sort of thrown in there, and if you didn't already like understand the name of some organisation or this historical reference, it might have been a bit confusing. But I think this has a very similar vibe to this other family graphic novel memoir, The Best We Could Do by T. Bui. I think if you've read this one, you would probably enjoy Heimat as well. And after that quite hard-hitting book, I decided, for no real good reason, to reread the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. For context, I read the first 4 of these books. It's a 6-book series between, I think, 2015 and 16, maybe 17 was when I read the 4th book. I honestly don't remember, but the point is, it's been ages. And I remember really enjoying these books. They all have like 4 or 5 stars from me on Goodreads from the first time I read them. But I knew that on rereading them, I would almost definitely not enjoy them as much. That's definitely the case. This went from a 4-star read to a 2-star read, which for me is like, meh, it's okay. But you know what? It's fun. I have a lot more negative than positive things to say about this book, but if you bear with me while I rant about all the things I didn't like, I do have some positive things to say towards the end of this review. You must know what this book is about. I'm sure everyone and their mother has read this series. It's a YA fantasy series about the world's greatest assassin called Selena Saldothian, which, yes, is a dumb name and is not spelled like you think it is, as are many things within this series. My first gripe is Selena herself is kind of the ultimate Mary Sue character. She's not well-rounded or complex. She's just the victim of a very muddy characterization. It's like when Sarah J. Maas was picking out like what characteristics and what traits to give her. She kind of like closed her eyes and like threw a dart at a wall to like pick randomly, but then did this like 12 times. So I actually have a list of all the amazing and unique things about Selena I will read to you. Firstly, she's the world's best assassin. She's stunningly beautiful and she knows it. She loves fashion and dresses, she loves music, and she can play the piano beautifully. She loves animals and dogs are always drawn to her somehow. She's also a huge bookworm, loves reading. She was orphaned under mysterious circumstances. She eats a lot, more than any other girl he's seen. She potentially has magical fae powers. It's mentioned in like chapter 2. She has a fun and unique physical attribute of having purple rings around her irises in her eyes. She's sassy, independent and fierce, but also vulnerable. And she has 3 huge scars on her back that she accidentally shows up to other characters at opportune moments to force a sense of closeness. Because of this massive mix of characteristics, she's quite infuriating to read about because I really can't get a grasp on who she is, because despite this like massive list of traits, Sarah J. Maas will like just change them up at random points within the story. She'll go from being one thing to be the exact opposite, and it's just to force a moment of closeness or to force some sort of romantic moment with another character. It doesn't work for me. I didn't like it. I think Selena's kind of an idiot. I also have a list of objectively stupid things Selena has done. She has this habit of, when she discovers a new piece of information or a clue to a mystery, she has some sort of run-in, she meets a new character, any of these things, she won't do anything about it. She will like learn something and then not put it into practice to solve whatever mystery there is. But she also won't tell anyone about it. She'll literally just like have something happen to her and then it's like, oh, okay, that happened to me, but it's not my problem. I'm not going to do anything about it. And I'm like, no, you actually need to be doing something because that's how the plot will progress. And she doesn't. She does nothing. She just goes about her day like nothing has changed. I have one particularly good example of this that I want to point out. It's kind of a spoiler, so skip this bit if you're one of the 1% of people that hasn't read this book. But she like meets the ghost of this ancient fae queen who gives her a message and is like, there is something evil in this castle, Selena. I need you to find it. I need you to hunt it down and destroy it. And Selena is like, oh, that's a new piece of information. But I can't be bothered to think about it now. Instead, I'm going to go back to thinking about the mysterious and malevolent force which is brutally murdering my competitors. I guess I'll never know what that ancient evil Elena warned me about was. I just can't deal with this. To touch briefly on the relationship between Selena and Dorian in this book, it's a no from me. I really don't care. They have about 3 conversations throughout the entire book, and it's like Sarah J Maas was trying to put in just enough interaction to avoid any accusations of it being like insta-lovey, but it didn't really work. They have no chemistry. And so maybe she made it not insta-love, but she didn't make it not bad. The structure of the story, it had potential because it's basically about this competition to become the King's Champion, aka his personal assassin. And Selena is one of 24 competitors, and they have 13 like tests over I think 13 weeks, and there's like a final duel at the end. But instead of being centered around this competition, which it sounds like it's going to be according to the blurb, so much of it happens like away, like off the page, I don't know how to say it, like off screen. Like there are 13 tests and we actually see I think less than half of them happen. The other ones, the text will just tell us like 3 more tests had happened and 3 more competitors were sent home. Now it was only X amount of days until the final duel. It just keeps telling us things that happen instead of showing, and that's like a main thing in the series. And then we get like another 100 pages of Selena not being an assassin and just wandering around for a bit and setting up this futile love triangle. I'm wondering why there weren't just fewer competitors to like simplify the story a bit, like just have fewer competitors or have fewer tests. If you're not going to write about them anyway, like just cut them. It's really not a big deal. Or instead of 13 tests there could have been 12, and then it could have been like the 12 labors of Hercules, and that reference could have been incorporated into the sort of mishmash of world building that already exists. I'm definitely not the first person to point it out, but the world building doesn't really make sense. I have a few gripes about this in particular. Firstly, Yule Mass is obviously Christmas. It's like not even sly. And the word marks are obviously runes. Again, not that sly. And then some of the place names are based on like English words. So there's like the city of Rifthold, there's a place called Belhaven, there's the White Fang Mountains, obviously those are all English words, and there's other places which are like made up words like Aniel and Maya, I think it's said, and Endovia. There's really no rhyme or reason to how things are set up. And one final thing, it's very unclear what kind of time period you should be imagining when you read this book in terms of like human technology and innovation. This is a world that has billiard tables, clocks and clockwork, and also like mass-produced books. So like the printing press is a big thing and anyone can buy a book. But at the same time they don't have indoor plumbing or guns. So half the time I'm picturing like the Middle Ages, I know, like the 1200s, and then sometimes they'll say something and I'm like, oh, is this the Victorian era? Are we like 600 years later than I was picturing before? It's really not clear. Okay, now we're going to talk about the things I liked. First of all, the world building is dumb, but I like a map, and there is a quite a nice map at the front of the book. I'm a sucker for a map. I think it's nice. I also really like the trope of a secret passage. I'm a sucker for hidden tunnels, passages, all that kind of stuff. I've come to realise that it's like one of my favourite tropes of all time. It doesn't even have to be done that well for me to enjoy it. I love everything about it. I wish I lived in a big house with like secret tunnels and passages everywhere. I'm kind of obsessed. And basically overall, this book is fun and exciting, and it's not like pointlessly long to the point where it feels drawn out. Although I'm sure I won't be saying the same thing when I get to the books later in the series, which are all like 600 pages. It's an engaging, if a bit shallow, adventure story with a bit of romance thrown in. I've given it 2 stars, like I said, because it's not very good, basically. But it is fun, and I am going to finish the series. I'm going to reread the 4 I've already read. I've also owned the 5th book. It's on my TBR shelf up there. I'm going to read that at last, and then I am going to read the 6th book. There's also like a novella bind up and a companion novel, which I am going to read as well. So I'm committing here and now to actually finally finishing this series. It's very addictive. It's kind of like the book form of candy floss or popcorn. There's not much nutritional value, but it's fun. That's basically all I have to say about that. And then straight after, I read the sequel, Crown of Midnight. This is a weird one because in the first half of the book, basically nothing happens, and then in the second half of the book so much stuff happens. It's a mess, but it's a fun mess. Again, Selena is doing the thing where she'll get new information, she'll have this like strange mysterious encounter, there's a hint that there's a mystery she could solve if she wanted to, and instead she'll just do nothing. The first half of the book is basically her just like sitting in the castle and hating the king. I don't think she's a very good protagonist just in the technical sense, because it feels like the plot is really trying to engage her and is trying to like draw her in to the story, but it feels like she's almost fighting against it. I think within literally the first 50 pages there's like another massive example of this. Again, I'm going to put a little spoiler alert warning here. She sees this mysterious cloaked figure outside the castle library, and they're like obviously not human, they're obviously evil, they're obviously suspicious and creepy and up to something. Does she follow this thing and try and investigate? Does she ask anyone else for help? Does she warn anyone about this thing? Nope. She does absolutely nothing about it. She basically just forgets it even happened. The writing of this series is generally quite inoffensive, but it's not as powerful as it thinks it is. It's a bit bland, to be honest. It does a lot of telling instead of showing, but I guess it's also kind of a worthy vehicle of the story it's telling. So that's kind of all I'll say about that. There is one particular writing technique that really irritated me. You know when you're watching TV and something really dramatic will happen in a scene and then they have the ad break there, but then later, like say you've bought the show on DVD and you're watching it, there'll be the dramatic moment, the screen will awkwardly fade to black and then it will come straight back again because obviously there's no ad break. That kind of thing will happen in this. They'll be in the middle of a scene, like a paragraph break, like there was like going to be an ad break in there, and instead it just carries on awkwardly, and I'm like, why did we need that paragraph break? It's not like you ended the chapter and then we start somewhere else. You literally just put a paragraph break in the middle of this dramatic thing, and then we stayed there, we came back. It was just really annoying. But to be fair, in the second half where things actually start happening, this annoying technique was less used. Another note on the relationship, again, didn't like it. I don't think her and her love interests in this book's relationship and their dynamic, it hasn't really changed at all since the first book. There's just a lot of telling and not showing. So Sarah J Maas will write like, oh, something had changed between them, things were different now, and I'm like, okay, can we have any evidence of that? And she's like, nope, now they're kissing. The character of Cole, that's how I'm pronouncing his name. I've heard lots of people call him Kale. I cannot in good faith call him that because that's dumb. I'm clinging to the belief that he doesn't have that dumb a name. But Cole, as we're going to call him, he's really annoying in this book. He turns into like this massive hypocrite who's always whining about something. It's so infuriating. And on the other hand, Dorian was kind of irritating in the first book, and he's more interesting in this one. I actually like the like subplot to do with him that got added in this book. I actually completely forgot about it. So when I was reading it, I was like, oh, this is interesting. I totally forgot this was going to happen. And I like the groundwork that that subplot laid for later in the series. I'm kind of intrigued to see how that will eventually turn out. And again, there was the secret tunnel trope, a new one this time. There's multiple secret tunnels and passages within this series. I'm a simple woman, that's what I'm looking for. And Selena, like I said, is still a really annoying, thick Mary Sue kind of character, but at least in this book we do get to see her being assassin-y. We spend the first book and the first half of this one being told what an amazing killer, and she's so dangerous and she's murderous. We get told this so often and we only see like a little bit of it, but then I think it's about halfway through this book we get a scene where she is properly being an assassin, and that was fun. It took a bit too long to get there, but I did really like that scene, and I think there's like a couple more bits where you actually get a sense of her being this like dangerous murderer that we've been told so many times that she is. But then what was annoying is after which they kind of talked it back, and it's very unclear how her being an assassin is meant to be good or bad, because she's very arrogant about it and she like thinks a lot about what an amazing assassin she is, and the other characters very often are like, oh, she's so dangerous, but then also at the same time they're all thinking the opposite, and there's loads of times where characters will think, oh, she's so dangerous but she looks so vulnerable now, and Selena herself will go from thinking, oh, I'm the world's greatest assassin, and then she'll think, oh no, that's really bad, killing is bad, and I'm like, I'm really confused about how to feel about this. Am I meant to think that she is an anti-hero because she's an assassin and assassins are bad? Or am I meant to think that she's the victim and she's gonna like overcome her assassin training and become a good person? It's very unclear what to think, because the book itself doesn't know what to think about this, and the author and the other characters, they don't know what to think about this. This kind of jumble of a portrayal she's given, it sort of undermines itself, because like I said, it's really hard to get a grasp on her. It's really hard to predict how she'll react in any given circumstance, because her character just changes so often. And finally, the ending of this book. Wow, what a reveal. No one saw that coming. Even the first time I read this series, I guessed the twist, which is revealed on, I think it's like the very last page even. I was maybe like 100 pages in to Throne of Glass, and I was like, oh, I bet this is gonna happen. And then I had to sit through 2 books until I was proven correct. And it's kind of ridiculous how none of the other characters, it doesn't even cross their mind whether this thing could happen or this thing could be true. They're sort of bending themselves over backwards to avoid thinking about it. They're just being so willfully idiotic for 2 books. And I'm like, how did no one guess this? But at least after that reveal and the ending, I think the series is going to finally get into gear for what it's really about, because the first book was about an assassin competition, and the rest of the series is very much not about that. It has this much bigger overarching plot, and that starts to get going now that we've had this reveal. Having said that, I'm pretty sure that the first like 200 pages of the next book are just Selena like moping around on rooftops, I seem to remember. Maybe that's wrong. It could be the first 250 pages. But anyway, I've given 2 stars to this one as well, and I don't have high hopes for the rest of the series, but at the same time, I really want to read them, and I really want to find out what happens. So it's clearly doing something right. And the last book I read in May was Anya's Ghost by Vera Broskell. This was such an unexpected delight. I really did not think I was going to like it as much as I did. It was just really excellent. I sometimes have the problem with graphic novels where they're not quite long enough, or they don't give me quite as much plot as I wanted. Sometimes I feel like, oh, I wish there'd been another 50 pages or something to just like really develop things further or get deeper into the story. And this one, it's so good. I absolutely did not feel that way. It's such a well crafted story. It's perfectly plotted, perfectly paced, and it's just so like tight and well executed. It's about this teenage girl called Anya who meets a ghost, and then things spiral from there. It actually touches on quite a lot of topics: relationships, sex, cheating, family, immigration. Anya and her family are originally from Russia, assimilating into culture, bullying. It touches on so many things, and it's just such a well-crafted story. I really cannot emphasize that enough. I don't really have any notes. I don't really have any criticisms. I guess if I was being really picky, I would say that the final like climax denouement of the story wasn't as strong as the rest of it, but like it was still good. It was still overall such a good book. In April, when I was doing the Owls Readathon, I had to pick between this one and another graphic novel called Sheets, which is actually right here, just off camera. And I had to pick between these 2 for the divination prompt, which is where I had to use a random number generator to choose between them. And it chose Sheets, so I read this one last month, and they're both about ghosts. And honestly, this one was kind of disappointing. It had the I wish there was more thing going for it. I thought the story didn't really develop as deeply as I wanted it to. And if only I had read Anya's Ghost then, I would have been so happy, because this was so great. So if you are looking for a graphic novel about a ghost, I definitely recommend this one. It was so good, so good. I gave it 4 stars. Really great. So those 4 were my May reads. We're already like over a week into June and I haven't read anything. I'm hoping to read Heir of Fire, the 3rd book in the Throne of Glass series. It's so long, it's like a massive jump between Crown of Midnight and this one. I kind of feel like it's the jump from Prisoner of Azkaban to Goblet of Fire, like just how big the books got all of a sudden. This one is, okay, it's like 550 pages. So I'm hoping to read that one. I also want to read My Sister the Serial Killer by Oinken Braithwaite. This is actually my sister's, I borrowed it. It's quite short, so there's quite a difference between them. But those are the 2 books I'm hoping to read so far, and beyond that, we'll see. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to check the description and all the information there. Please do as much as you can and then a bit more. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye!